The bell above my diner door chimed, and the whole room went silent. I looked up from wiping down the counter, and there he was, Noah Barrett. The man who'd shut down 3 restaurants in 6 months with nothing but a pen and a brutal sense of honesty. His gray scarf hung loose around his neck, and his face carried that cold, unreadable expression I'd seen in every photo online. My heart slammed against my ribs, so hard I thought everyone could hear it. "Table for one," he said, his voice flat and professional. I nodded, unable to speak, and gestured toward the booth by the window. The same booth where old Mr. Harris usually sat, warning me about this exact moment. "He lives to destroy," Mr. Harris had said just yesterday. "Don't give him the satisfaction." But here we were. The few customers scattered around the diner exchanged nervous glances. Mrs. Chun from the corner booth leaned toward her husband and whispered something I couldn't hear. Everyone knew who Noah Barrett was. Everyone knew what he did to places like mine. I grabbed a menu with shaking hands and walked it over to him.
He didn't look at me.
Just pulled out his phone, snapped a photo of the faded wallpaper, and started typing notes. My stomach twisted into knots. This was it. The moment that would either save Hazel's table or bury it for good. 5 years of scrubbing floors, working double shifts, pouring every cent I had into this broken-down diner. All of it came down to whatever this man decided to write tonight. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. I took a breath and steadied myself. Grandma Hazel's voice echoed in my head, soft but firm. "Feed the heart first, baby girl. The rest will follow." I walked back to the kitchen and stared at the worn recipe journal sitting on the metal shelf. Water-stained pages, flour fingerprints, handwriting that looped and swirled like music. Every recipe in that book was hers. Every lesson, every memory. And there was one dish that meant more than all the others combined. Grandma's rustic heirloom stew. The one she made during hard winters when money was tight and hope was thinner. The one that smelled like home, tasted like safety, and felt like being wrapped in her arms after a long, terrible day. It was risky. Critics didn't come to small-town diners looking for comfort food. They wanted innovation, presentation, something Instagram-worthy. But I wasn't trying to impress him with tricks or trends. I was trying to feed his heart. I pulled out the ingredients: carrots, potatoes, herbs I'd dried myself, beef I'd marinated overnight. My hands moved on instinct, the way Grandma taught me. No measuring cups. No timers. Just feel. As the stew simmered, the aroma filled the tiny kitchen and drifted into the dining room. I saw Noah's head lift slightly, just for a second, before he went back to his phone. 20 minutes later, I ladled the stew into a bowl, placed it on a tray with fresh bread, and carried it out to his table. He didn't say thank you. Didn't even acknowledge me. Just picked up his spoon, dipped it into the bowl, and brought it to his lips. I held my breath. He chewed slowly, his expression blank. Then he paused. His jaw stopped moving. His eyes, those cold, analytical eyes, shifted, softened. He took another bite, then another. And then I saw it.
A tear.
Just one at first, sliding down his cheek. Then another. His hand trembled as he set the spoon down, and he covered his mouth like he was trying to hold something back. The diner was dead silent. Everyone was watching. "Sir?" I said quietly. "Are you okay?" He didn't answer. Just stood abruptly, pulled out his wallet, dropped 2 20s on the table without counting, and walked straight out the door. The bell chimed again as he left. I stood there, frozen, staring at the half-eaten bowl of stew. Mrs. Chun broke the silence first. "What just happened?" I had no idea. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my tiny apartment above the diner, refreshing the Willow Creek Chronicle website over and over, waiting for his review to drop. At 11:47 p.m., it finally posted. My hands shook as I read the headline. Hazel's Table, a memory on a spoon. And underneath, the words that would change everything. I walked in planning to write her obituary. Instead, I found her legacy. Would you have served the stew, or played it safe with something else? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe before the next chapter drops. I was 6 years old when my mother left. One morning she was there, braiding my hair and humming softly. By evening, her closet was empty and Dad was sitting at the kitchen table with his head in his hands. He never told me why she left. Just said sometimes people need to find themselves and that it wasn't my fault. But kids don't believe that. Kids always think it's their fault. 2 years later, Vivian walked into our lives wearing a cream-colored dress and a smile that could sell ice to penguins. She volunteered at church, hosted charity events, and knew everyone's name at the grocery store. My father fell for her like a man drowning grabs a rope. The wedding was small. I wore a yellow dress that itched. Vivian kissed my forehead during the vows and whispered, "We're going to be such good friends." That lie lasted exactly 3 days. Behind closed doors, she was different. Cold. Calculated. She'd move my things and claim I'd lost them. Serve me smaller portions at dinner and tell Dad I wasn't hungry. Make comments about my mother that cut like paper, tiny, sharp, leaving marks nobody else could see. "Your mother didn't want you," she said once, folding laundry in the hallway. That's why she ran. I learned to stay quiet, to keep my head down, to disappear into the corners of our house. The only escape I had was Grandma Hazel's kitchen. Every Sunday, Dad would drive me to her small house on Maple Street. The moment I walked through that door, I could breathe again. Grandma never asked questions. She just handed me an apron and put me to work. "Cooking's like life, baby girl," she'd say, stirring a pot with her arthritic hands. "You can't rush it. You gotta let things simmer, let the flavors find each other. And when it's ready, you'll know." She taught me everything. How to chop onions without crying. How to taste with your heart, not just your mouth. How to turn scraps into something beautiful. But more than recipes, she gave me something I didn't have at home, belief. "You're gonna do something special someday," she told me once, her wrinkled hands cupping my face. "Don't let nobody tell you different." When I was 19, Dad died suddenly. Heart attack at work. Gone before the ambulance even arrived. Vivian didn't cry at the funeral. She stood there in black, accepting condolences with grace, playing the grieving widow perfectly. A week later, she called me into the living room. "Your father didn't leave much," she said, sitting on the couch with her legs crossed. "And what he did leave, well, it's going towards settling debts." "What about his will?" I asked. She smiled. That same cream-colored smile from the wedding. "There's nothing for you, dear. You've been in college, contributing nothing. This house needs to be sold." My stomach dropped. "Sold? This is my home." "Was your home," she corrected. "You have 2 weeks." I packed my life into garbage bags and moved into a friend's basement. Vivian sold the house within a month and disappeared into her social circles, untouchable and unbothered. Grandma Hazel passed 6 months later. Pneumonia took her quickly, quietly, like she'd just decided it was time. At her funeral, I was handed a single item, her recipe journal. Pages loose and frayed, stained with decades of love. On the inside cover, she'd written, "Feed the heart first. The rest will follow. Love, Grandma." That book became my Bible. I worked 3 years as a line cook in Detroit, saving every dollar, sleeping on couches, ignoring my own exhaustion. And when I finally had enough, I came back to Willow Creek. Not for revenge. Not for closure. For her. The diner I found was a disaster. Peeling paint, broken booths, a kitchen that looked like it hadn't been cleaned since the 90s. But the rent was cheap, and the location was right on Main Street. I signed the lease with shaking hands. For 6 months, I scrubbed, painted, and rebuilt that place from the ground up. I hung a framed photo of Grandma Hazel by the register, her smiling in her kitchen, apron dusted with flour. When I opened the doors to Hazel's table, I thought people would come. They didn't. If you've ever started from nothing, drop a heart in the comments. The first week, I served 12 customers total. Most of them wandered and out of curiosity, ordered coffee, and left. A few tried the food and said it was nice, which is code for forgettable. By week 2, I was sitting alone at the counter, watching cars pass by outside, wondering if I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. Then the rumor started. I first heard it from Mr. Harris, one of my only regulars. He slid into booth 3 one morning, shaking his head. "You hear what they're saying about you?" he asked. "Who's they?" "Vivian." My blood went cold. "She's telling people you stole her recipes," Mr. Harris said quietly. "Says your dad taught her everything, and you just copied her." I gripped the edge of the counter. "That's a lie." "I know it is," he said. "But you know how this town works. People believe what they want to believe. And Vivian's got friends." He wasn't wrong. Within days, the whispers spread like wildfire. Customers who'd planned to stop by suddenly didn't. The few who came and looked at me with suspicion, like I was some kind of fraud. One woman even had the nerve to say it to my face. "I heard you're using stolen recipes," she said, standing at the register with her arms crossed. "That true?" "No," I said firmly. "Every recipe here came from my grandmother." She looked me up and down, unconvinced. "Well, Vivian's a respected woman in this town. I think I'll trust her." She walked out without ordering. I wanted to scream. I wanted to march over to Vivian's pristine house and tear her apart with words. But Grandma's voice whispered in my head again, "Quiet justice, baby girl. Let the truth simmer." So I kept cooking. Every morning, I opened the doors. Every night, I closed them, exhausted and defeated. The diner stayed quiet. The register stayed empty. Then one evening, my phone buzzed with a notification. It was a post from Noah Barrett's social media. "Reviewing Hazel's table next week. Let's see if small-town cooking has anything real to offer." My stomach dropped. Mr. Harris saw the look on my face. "What's wrong?" I showed him the post. He whistled low. "That man's destroyed better restaurants than this." "I know. So, what are you gonna do?" I looked at Grandma's photo on the wall, her smile frozen in time, forever hopeful. "I'm going to cook," I said. The next few days were torture. I couldn't sleep.
Couldn't eat.
Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Noah Barrett's cold face, imagined his brutal review tearing apart everything I'd built. People started talking. Word spread fast that the Critic was coming, and suddenly the diner had visitors again. Not to eat, but to watch. To see the train wreck. "You really think you can impress him?" one guy asked, smirking. "I'm not trying to impress him," I said. "I'm trying to feed him." He laughed like I'd told a joke. The night before Noah's visit, I stayed late in the kitchen, staring at Grandma's journal. I flipped through pages slowly, reading her notes in the margins. "Add more time when the heart's heavy. This one's for cold nights and colder people. Love doesn't need a measuring cup." I stopped on her rustic heirloom stew. The one she made when everything felt impossible. The one that tasted like safety. I ran my fingers over the page, feeling the grooves of her handwriting. "Help me, Grandma," I whispered. "Would you close your doors, or face him head-on? Tell me below." I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the refrigerator downstairs, replaying every possible disaster in my head. What if he hated it? What if he laughed? What if this was the review that finally killed Hazel's table for good? By 5 a.m., I gave up trying to rest. I walked downstairs into the dark kitchen, flipped on the lights, and stood there in the silence. The diner felt different in the early morning, holy almost, like a church before service. I pulled out Grandma's journal and set it on the counter, opening it to the stew recipe. The page was stained with something rust-colored, maybe tomato sauce, maybe wine. Her handwriting looped across the paper in faded blue ink. "Rustic heirloom stew, for when the winters are long and the people are cold." I smiled despite my nerves. The ingredients were simple. Beef, carrots, potatoes, onions, garlic, herbs. Nothing fancy. Nothing Instagram-worthy. Just real food, made with care. I started chopping, letting the rhythm calm me. The knife hit the cutting board in steady beats. Thunk, thunk, thunk. My hands moved without thinking the way Grandma taught me. "Don't rush it," I heard her say in my head. "Let it breathe." I browned the meat, letting it sizzle and spit in the Dutch oven. Added the onions, watched them soften and turn golden. The smell filled the kitchen, rich, deep, comforting. I poured in the broth, added the vegetables, the herbs. Then I did something Grandma always did. I closed my eyes and stirred clockwise 3 times. For luck, she used to say, and for love. As the stew simmered, I sat on a stool and watched the pot. Steam curled upward, carrying memories with it. Grandma humming while she cooked. Her laugh that sounded like wind chimes. The way she'd taste something and nod, satisfied, like she'd just solved a mystery. I missed her so much it hurt. By 10 a.m., the stew was ready. By 10:30, the diner had filled with people who weren't there to eat. They were there to watch, to witness the execution. And at 10:47, the bell above the door chimed. Noah Barrett walked in. He wore the same gray scarf, the same unreadable expression. His eyes scanned the room like a predator assessing prey. Every conversation stopped. Every fork froze midair. He didn't acknowledge anyone, just walked to the booth by the window and sat down. I grabbed a menu, but my hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped it. Breathe, I whispered to myself. I walked over, set the menu in front of him, and forced my voice to stay steady. Can I get you something to drink? Water, he said without looking up. I nodded and walked back to the kitchen. My heart was pounding so loud, I thought the whole diner could hear it. I ladled the stew into a bowl, careful, precise. Added a slice of fresh bread on the side. Wiped the edge of the bowl clean. Then I carried it out. I set it in front of him without a word. He glanced at it briefly, pulled out his phone, and took a photo. Then he picked up his spoon. The entire diner held its breath. He dipped the spoon into the stew, brought it to his lips, and tasted. His face didn't change. He chewed slowly, swallowed, took another bite, and then something shifted. His eyes softened. His jaw slowed. He set the spoon down and stared at the bowl like it had just spoken to him. Then I saw it. A tear rolled down his cheek. Hit like if you believe food can heal more than hunger. He looked smaller somehow. Not physically, but in the way people do when they've been stripped of the armor they usually wear. The confidence, the sharpness, the reputation gone. Just a man, standing in a diner, asking for a moment of my time. My hands were still trembling from the lunch rush. The smell of onions and rosemary clung to my apron. Every table was filled, but somehow, the room went silent again, just like the day he first came in. I nodded, motioning toward the corner booth where this whole story had started. He sat down carefully, like he was afraid of breaking something. I slid into the seat across from him, my pulse loud in my ears. Your review, I began, my voice shaky. It changed everything. He smiled faintly, eyes distant. It changed me too. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The noise of forks clinking and coffee pouring faded into a hum. He glanced at the bowl of stew I'd just served to another table, watching the steam rise like smoke from an old memory. I wasn't planning to write that piece, he said finally. I came here to, well, I don't even know. I thought I'd lost my sense of wonder a long time ago. I thought food had stopped meaning anything. But that first spoon, he paused, his voice breaking. That stew brought back someone I hadn't thought about in years. I swallowed hard. Your grandmother? He nodded, eyes glistening. She raised me after my parents died. She cooked the same stew every Sunday. Nothing fancy, just honest. The kind of meal that made you forget the world could be cruel. I've been chasing that feeling in every restaurant, every kitchen. And then I tasted yours. He let out a shaky laugh, looking embarrassed. It was like she was there again, sitting across from me, humming that same old tune she used to hum while chopping carrots. I didn't know what to say. My throat was tight. My grandmother taught me everything I know, I whispered. That stew was hers too. I kept her recipe on a scrap of paper in my apron pocket for years, even when nobody cared. He nodded. I could tell. For a while, we just sat there, two strangers bound by the ghosts who taught us how to love through food. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small envelope. He slid it across the table. What's this? I asked. An invitation, he said. There's a charity event next week in the city. They're honoring chefs who cook with meaning, real meaning. I told them about you. My breath caught. You told them about me? I told them the truth, he said simply. That you're the heart of this town. That your food is the kind people don't forget. I opened the envelope. Inside was a formal letter on heavy paper, the kind you can smell money on. My name printed in gold. Chef Hazel Walker, guest of honor. I blinked at the words, not trusting them. Why would they want me? Noah's smile deepened, but there was sadness behind it. Because people need to be reminded that love can still taste like stew from a small-town diner. Because you reminded me. The bell chimed again. More customers came in, laughing, pointing, asking if this was the place that made the critic cry. I started to rise, but Noah reached out, his hand brushing mine. One more thing, he said softly. I didn't just come to invite you. My heart skipped. Then why? He took a breath, looking at me like he was searching for courage. I came to say thank you, and to ask if you'd let me help. I frowned. Help? You mean? Whatever you need, he said quickly. Marketing, management, recipes, connections. I've seen restaurants rise and fall for 20 years, but I've never seen heart like this.
I don't want to just write about it.
I want to be part of it. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The same man who terrified chefs across the state was sitting in my booth, asking to be part of something I'd built from a memory and a dream. I don't know what to say, I murmured. Say yes, he said with a small grin. But I hesitated. Because in that moment, I realized something. Hazel's table wasn't just mine anymore. It belonged to the people who came in hungry for comfort, to the ghosts who whispered recipes through generations, to the critic who remembered how to feel. Still, a quiet part of me, the part that had once been afraid of failing, whispered that maybe this was what Grandma would have wanted. I looked at him, really looked at him. Okay, I said finally. Let's do it. But only if you're willing to roll up your sleeves and wash dishes when we get slammed. His laugh filled the diner, warm and human.
Deal.
For the first time, he didn't seem like Noah Barrett, the critic. He was just Noah. And somehow that felt right. The next few weeks blurred together. Reporters came. TV crews filmed. Customers poured in from states away. Every night, I'd find Noah in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, tasting, stirring, laughing. He had opinions about everything, but he never took over. He just fit. Like he'd always belonged there. And then one night, after the crowd thinned and the neon open sign flickered off, we sat outside on the back steps, sharing leftover pie. The stars hung low over Willow Creek. I used to think critics were supposed to be untouchable, he said quietly. Above it all. But maybe that's the problem. You can't taste life if you're afraid to get your hands dirty. I smiled. And you've definitely been getting your hands dirty. He laughed, brushing flour off his jeans. Best mess I've ever made. We fell into silence again, the kind that doesn't need filling. When I looked at him, I realized the diner had given both of us something we didn't know we needed, a reason to keep going, a reminder that love doesn't die, it just finds new recipes. But as the crickets sang and the kitchen lights dimmed, I couldn't shake the feeling that this story wasn't finished. That Noah had one more secret tucked behind those quiet eyes. And when he finally spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. There's something else I haven't told you, he said. My stomach tightened. What is it? He looked up at the stars, then back at me. The woman I wrote about, the one who taught me to cook, who used to hum in the kitchen, he paused. She wasn't just my grandmother. I waited, my heart pounding. She was yours too. The night air froze around me. What? I breathed. He nodded, eyes glistening. Hazel, I think we're family. And just like that, the world tilted, memories, recipes, and ghosts colliding in one impossible truth. What happens when legacy turns out to be blood? Guess below before the next chapter. Noah Barrett stood at my counter looking nothing like the cold, calculating critic who'd walked through my doors a week ago. He looked human. Can we talk? He asked quietly, glancing around at the packed diner. Somewhere private? My first instinct was to say no. to tell him whatever he needed to say could wait until closing. But something in his eyes stopped me. Something vulnerable and raw. "Give me 5 minutes," I said. I told my part-time server, Jenny, to handle the register, then led Noah through the kitchen to the small office in the back. It wasn't much, just a desk, a filing cabinet, and a chair that squeaked. He stood there awkwardly, hands still in his pockets. "So," I said, crossing my arms, "what's this about?" He took a breath. "Your grandmother's name was Hazel, right?"
Yes.
"Why? What was her last name?" I hesitated. "Montgomery. Hazel Montgomery." His face went pale. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a photograph, old, creased, faded at the edges. He set it on the desk between us. "This was my grandmother," he said. I picked up the photo, and my breath caught. It was Grandma Hazel. Younger, maybe in her 50s, standing in front of a farmhouse kitchen with a bowl in her hands. The same smile, the same eyes, the same woman whose photo hung by my register. "That's impossible," I whispered. "Her name was Hazel too," Noah said. "Hazel Montgomery. She lived in Maple Ridge before she moved to Willow Creek. My grandfather died when my dad was young, and she took in a boarder to help with bills. A teenage boy whose family had kicked him out." My heart pounded. My grandmother told me that story. She said she treated that boy like her own son. Noah nodded slowly. "That boy was my grandfather. She saved his life, fed him, taught him to cook, gave him a place to belong. He talked about her until the day he died, said she was the only mother figure he ever had." The room spun. "So we're not related by blood," Noah said quickly, "but connected by her. She shaped both our families." I stared at the photo, my hands trembling. "The stew. That's why you cried." "She used to make it every Sunday," he said, his voice cracking. "When I was a kid, my grandfather would make it for me and tell me stories about her. How she'd hum while she cooked. How she said food was love you could taste. When she moved away, he lost touch with her. He spent years trying to find her again, but never did." Tears streamed down my face. She talked about him too. Said he was one of the good ones. That she wished she'd stayed in touch. Noah wiped his eyes. That stew brought me back to his kitchen. Back to being 7 years old, safe and loved. I wasn't ready for it. We stood there in silence, two strangers connected by a woman who'd been gone for years, but still managed to bring us together. "There's something else," Noah said, his voice hardening. "Something you need to know about Vivian. Would you forgive someone tied to your family's secrets? Comment forgive or never." Noah's jaw tightened when he said her name. "Vivian," he repeated. "Your stepmother." "What about her?" He pulled out his phone and scrolled through old emails. 5 years ago, she hired me to review a catering event she was hosting. Said it would be great publicity for both of us. I leaned against the desk. "Let me guess, you said no."
Worse.
I went, and the food was terrible. Store-bought appetizers on fancy plates. Grocery store cake with homemade labels. She was charging people thousands for garbage. "So you wrote a bad review." "I wrote an honest review," Noah corrected. "And she lost her mind. Called me a failed chef who couldn't make it in a real kitchen. Told everyone I was jealous, bitter, washed up. She had enough friends in this town to make it stick." My stomach turned. That sounded exactly like Vivian. "But here's the thing," Noah continued. "I started digging after that. Asked around. Talked to people who'd worked for her. And every single one of them said the same thing. She didn't create any of those recipes. She stole them." "From who?"
He looked at me.
"From your grandmother." The air left my lungs. "After your father died, Vivian got access to his things, including recipe journals your grandmother had given him years ago. She passed them off as her own, built a whole catering business on them, and climbed the social ladder on your family's legacy." Rage burned through me. "That's why she spread those rumors about me. She knew I had Grandma's real recipes. She was covering her tracks." "Exactly." I paced the small office, my hands shaking. "Do you have proof?" Noah smiled, cold and sharp. I have 3 former employees willing to go on record. I have photos of the original journals with your grandmother's handwriting. And I have contracts showing she charged premium prices for original family recipes. Why are you telling me this? He met my eyes. Because she destroyed my reputation once. And she's trying to destroy yours now. I think it's time someone returned the favor. Before I could respond, the office door swung open. Jenny stood there, pale and wide-eyed. Clara? You need to come out here.
Why?
Because Vivian just walked in. Ever seen karma arrive on time? Type justice served if you love this twist. The diner went silent the moment I stepped out of the office. Vivian stood near the entrance in a cream blazer and pearls, her smile sharp as a knife. Every head turned toward her. Conversations died mid-sentence. She looked around slowly, taking in the crowd, the full tables, the line of people still waiting outside. Well, she said loudly, isn't this charming? I walked toward her, my heart pounding. What do you want, Vivian? She tilted her head, fake concern dripping from her voice. I came to congratulate you, dear. I heard about your little viral moment. The critic took pity on you, how sweet. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Though I have to say, she continued, loud enough for everyone to hear, it's impressive what you can accomplish when you steal the right recipes. My hands clenched into fists. I didn't steal anything. Of course you did. She laughed, light, dismissive. Those recipes came from my late husband's family. Everyone knows that. You're just riding on someone else's hard work. The diner erupted in whispers. I saw doubt flash across some faces. Vivian had always been good at this, planting seeds, twisting truth, making herself untouchable. But then Noah stepped out from the kitchen. He moved slowly, deliberately, until he stood right beside me. The room fell silent again. You're right, Noah said calmly. We do know whose recipes these are. Vivian's smile faltered. Excuse me? He pulled a folder from under his arm and set it on the nearest table. These are copies of the original recipe journals, written by Hazel Montgomery. You'll notice the handwriting, the dates, the personal notes. All of it belongs to Clara's grandmother. Vivian's face went pale. And these, Noah continued, pulling out more papers, are sworn statements from 3 of your former employees. They all confirm that you never created a single original recipe. You stole them from Hazel's journals after Clara's father died. The crowd gasped. Vivian's voice turned sharp. Those people are liars. Are they? Noah asked. Because I also have receipts showing you charged clients thousands of dollars for original family recipes. That's fraud, Vivian. Her hands trembled. She looked around the diner, searching for allies, but found only stares. You set me up, she hissed at me. No, I said quietly. You set yourself up years ago. For a moment, she just stood there, exposed, powerless, stripped of the mask she'd worn for so long. Then someone started clapping. Mr. Harris, sitting in booth 3, slow and steady. Then Mrs. Chin joined in. Then Jenny. Then the whole diner erupted in applause. Vivian's face twisted with rage. She spun on her heel and stormed toward the door, her heels clicking like gunshots. But before she left, she turned back one last time. This isn't over, she spat. The door slammed behind her. Curious what's inside that letter? Stick around, next chapter might just make you cry. The next morning, the local newspaper ran the story. Hazel's table owner exposes town scandal, family betrayal, recipe theft, and redemption through food. It spread like wildfire. By noon, Vivian's catering business had lost half its clients. By the end of the week, she'd been removed from the women's club board. Her friends stopped returning her calls. Her carefully constructed empire crumbled like burnt pastry. People stopped me on the street to apologize. I'm sorry I believed her, one woman said, tears in her eyes. I should have known better. We all should have, another man added. But I didn't gloat, didn't celebrate. I just kept cooking, because that's what Grandma would have wanted. Noah became a regular after that. Not as a critic, just as a person. He'd sit by the window with his coffee, scribbling notes for his column, occasionally helping in the kitchen when the rush got too crazy. "You don't have to do this," I told him once as he washed dishes. "I know," he said, smiling. "But your grandmother would have wanted me to." The diner changed, too. It stopped being just a restaurant. It became a gathering place for people who'd been overlooked, dismissed, betrayed. Veterans sat in booth 2 every Tuesday. Single mothers brought their kids after school. Widows met for coffee and conversation. Everyone had a story. Everyone had pain. And somehow, Hazel's table became the place where people felt safe enough to share it. One afternoon, a letter arrived in the mail. It was addressed to Hazel's granddaughter in shaky handwriting. No return address. I opened it carefully. Inside was a single sheet of paper and another recipe, written in Grandma's handwriting. The letter read, "Dear Clara, I was your grandmother's neighbor for 30 years. She asked me to hold on to this recipe and send it to you when the time was right. She said you'd know when you needed it. It's called Hazel's Hope Stew. She made it when people had lost their way. I think now is the time. Keep feeding hearts, baby girl. You're doing her proud. Margaret." Tears blurred my vision as I read the recipe. It was similar to the rustic heirloom stew, but with different herbs: rosemary for remembrance, thyme for courage, sage for wisdom. I added it to the menu that same day. And when the first person ordered it, a young woman who'd just lost her mother, I watched her take that first bite and saw her shoulders relax, saw the tension leave her face. "This tastes like a hug," she whispered. I smiled. That's the point. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like and share. 6 months later, Hazel's table wasn't just surviving, it was thriving in a way that felt almost unreal. The line outside had become part of the scenery, stretching past the corner bakery and down the street, a ribbon of faces that changed daily but carried the same eager glow. The sign that once squeaked in the wind now gleamed with a fresh coat of paint. The little bell above the door never seemed to rest. We'd hired 3 more servers, 2 kitchen assistants, and a high schooler who came in after class to help wash dishes. The sound of laughter filled every corner, the kind of laughter that comes from good food, good stories, and feeling seen. I used to dread mornings here. Now I woke up before dawn just to get a head start on the dough and the coffee. And every Saturday, I taught a small cooking class in the diner after hours. We pushed the tables aside, rolled out the flour, and shared Grandma's lessons the way she used to share them with me, slowly, with patience, with stories in between. Some came to learn how to cook. Most came to remember how to care. There was always someone wiping tears when the scent of stew filled the room. Noah still came by almost every day. Sometimes he brought his laptop, other times just himself. He never sat at the same booth twice, always moving through the diner like he was trying to memorize it piece by piece. Sometimes I'd catch him smiling at the little things: the napkin holder Grandma had painted, the cracked tile near the register, the photo wall that had grown from 3 frames to nearly 20. One evening, long after the rush had faded and the neon sign flickered in the window, Noah stayed to help me wipe down tables. The smell of soap and coffee hung in the air. "You know," he said, glancing up, "if your grandmother could see this place, she'd be proud." I laughed softly, wringing out my rag. "She'd probably tell me the floors still need mopping." He grinned. "Probably. But she'd also tell you that you did exactly what she hoped you'd do." I raised an eyebrow. "And what's that?" He leaned against the counter, his voice low, certain. "You fed the heart first." I stopped for a moment, staring around the diner. The worn booths polished by 100 elbows, the humming lights, the framed photo of Grandma Hazel smiling from behind the register. The place wasn't perfect. The wallpaper still peeled a little at the edges. The chairs wobbled when kids swung their legs too hard. But it was warm, alive, loved. And that's all she ever wanted. Noah set down his rag and pulled something from his jacket pocket, a small, weathered notebook bound in cracked leather. "I found this," he said, holding it out, "in my grandfather's old trunk. It's full of recipes. Most of them are in his handwriting, but a few of notes that say Hazel's Way. I thought maybe we could merge them with yours." Create something new. Something ours. My hands shook as I took it. The pages were yellowed, edges frayed. The first recipe was for chicken dumpling soup, written in a man's careful cursive, with a note at the bottom. Ask Hazel about the broth. She always knows. She touched so many lives, I whispered. Noah smiled, eyes glistening.
She still is.
Through you. For a long time, we just stood there, the diner glowing around us, two people bound by a woman who'd been gone for years, but whose love still simmered quietly in every pot and every heart she'd left behind. That night, I added a new photo to the wall. Noah's grandfather, standing next to Grandma Hazel in that old farmhouse kitchen, both grinning like they'd just shared a secret. The same smile that lived somewhere deep in both of us. A week later, the phone rang. It was an editor from a major food magazine. "We've heard about your story," she said. "About your grandmother. About how you turned betrayal into something beautiful. We want to feature Hazel's Table in our Hidden Gems edition." I almost dropped the receiver. "You want to feature us?" "Yes," she said warmly. "We think people need to hear this story. Especially now." When the article came out, it was everywhere. The photos captured every bit of the diner's soul, the chipped coffee mugs, the stew bubbling on the stove, the corner window bathed in sunset. They printed a quote from me at the end. "My grandmother used to say that revenge doesn't always roar. Sometimes it simmers. And when it's ready, it serves itself." But the truth is, this was never about revenge. It was about remembering who we are and what we're capable of when we stop letting other people define us. Hazel's Table isn't just a diner. It's proof that love, cooked slowly and served with grace, will always outlast cruelty. The article went viral. Strangers wrote letters, saying they'd started cooking again for the first time in years. A woman from Oregon mailed me a photo of her own grandmother's stew pot with a note. "Thank you for reminding me what food means." The diner became a kind of pilgrimage for people who'd been broken and needed to remember warmth. Some came from towns I couldn't even pronounce. And still, every night, after the lights dimmed and the chairs were turned upside down, I whispered a quiet thank you to the woman who'd started it all. As for Vivian, word drifted through town that she'd left 3 months after the article was published. Packed up her things and drove off in the middle of the night. No goodbyes. No explanations. Just gone. I never saw her again. I never needed to. Sometimes, late at night, I stand at the register after locking up, the diner empty except for the echo of the day's laughter. The reflection of Grandma's picture glows faintly in the window glass. I touch the counter, still warm from the coffee pots, and whisper, "We did it, Grandma." Because in a world where cruelty often shouts and kindness barely whispers, we'd built something that spoke louder than both. Hazel's Table was never about fame or fortune. It was about quiet justice, the kind that doesn't humiliate or destroy, but heals one meal at a time. It was about showing that sometimes the best revenge is simply living well, loving fiercely, and feeding others what you once needed yourself. Now, every single day, I get to teach that lesson to the servers, the customers, the tired travelers who sit down with grief in their eyes and leave with warmth in their chest. I get to remind them that love is something you can taste. Grandma Hazel taught me that. And as I turn the lights off one by one and watch the moon spill across the counter, I know she's still here, somewhere between the scent of thyme and the sound of the bell above the door. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next story. Share your thoughts below. Your words might be the comfort someone else needs tonight. Thank you for being part of this family. And until next time, keep feeding hearts first.